Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming to our Day of Dialogue. It's actually been over 30 years that the City of Tallahassee has been putting on a Day of Dialogue on MLK weekend. So we are excited to have you all here with us this afternoon. We do have a festival going on outside, so we may have some more people join us afterwards. But we do appreciate you all for being here with us this afternoon. We have Commissioner Williams-Cox joining us this afternoon. I don't know if you want to say anything.
Glory.
And I won't prolong us any longer. I will apologize to the panelists really quickly. I have all of your bios because you sent it to me, and then I left them on my desk, so Ms. Nicole does not have your bio. So she may do a little flipping around for you all this afternoon, but I will introduce to you our moderator for the Day of Dialogue, Ms. Nicole Everett from Conversations with Nicole. Thank you.
All right, so one of the things that I really love is conversations, so I'm super excited to be moderating this Day of Dialogue. All right, so I am going to have our panel just kind of briefly introduce yourselves. So starting with Ms. Julia Denholm de Maria.
Thank you. How about now? Okay. So my name is Julia, and I am the program coordinator for Community Connections. We are a city-run program in part funded through DJJ, Department of Juvenile Justice. We operate out of the Palmer Monroe Teen Center, and I've been working there for about 11 years now. For the first 5 or 6, I was a case manager, and then I became program coordinator about 5.5 years ago. And I'm from Tallahassee originally, moved away for several years, and then moved back to pursue restorative justice and nonviolent communication. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Ramon Anderson.
Yes. My name is Ramon Anderson. I've been with the City of Tallahassee for about 5 years now. I'm the manager of our Human Service Division in the Department of Housing and Community Resilience. Prior to the city, I've had about 8 years in banking experience, economic development experience. Brought me to the city to explore more governmental administration. And so I've been here about 5 years, and glad to be here.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, our Deputy Chief of Tallahassee Police Department, Mr. Maurice Holmes.
Yes, Maurice Holmes, Deputy Chief, Tallahassee Police Department. Been the Deputy Chief at Tallahassee Police Department now for almost 6 years. Wow. February 1st will be 6 years.
Wow.
Wow. I'm my 31st year of law enforcement altogether. I started my career in Atlanta, Georgia, and circulated back home, which is where I was born and raised here in Tallahassee. I am currently over what we call the internal-external branch, which is what it sounds like. Working internally, where you have your FMO, your financial management, human resources, records management, and things of that nature, training, property and evidence, and also external, and where we go out into the community relations, engagement, and things of that nature. Very involved in the community.
All right, very good. So welcome to our panel. So we are talking about nonviolence. So the first question is, when we talk about a nonviolent community, what does that truly look like in practice and not just in theory? Go ahead, Maurice. Well, Maurice, this is for everybody.
Okay, for everybody,
yes.
So we just chime in.
Yes, chime in.
Well, it looks like a community in which I was raised in. You know, even though we were surrounded by violence, it was love to the core. It was, you had the neighbors that looked out for you. I still remember my neighbors, Miss Anna Mae Miles and others, Miss Bitt. And if you go down the road and you be sassy or disrespectful, if the phone call didn't beat you home, they beat you home. So that's just having that love. So nonviolent community is just like what it sounds like. A community in which people look out for each other, watch each other's back, make sure everybody's property is taken care of, and also making sure all their loved ones are taken care of and looked out for. So it's like a cohesive outer family unit is what I think a nonviolent community should look.
Okay, thank you for that.
When I think about a nonviolent community, think about what was going to keep it nonviolent, right? We know that nonviolence is the absence of violence, but what keeps it there? And most things that keeps things like that nonviolent is just the culture of the community and the culture of the people and the background of the people and the perception of the people who would be deemed to be nonviolent. So a community that's not going to be is going to be nonviolent is going to have to be a community where violence is unacceptable and it's where it's discouraged. And so where there's other routes to resolve conflicts, and the violence would have to be almost the last resort in every situation. That's where that would have to be. Now, like Deputy Chief Holmes said, that's probably how that was done, decades ago. But now with social media and the advent of the internet and all these things, where now we can see other ways of doing things. In some communities, that's the first route is violence. And so it's hard to get there. But if we're going to be a nonviolent community, it would have to be where violence is unacceptable and not tolerated.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just add that I think within those communities, one thing that can help the nonviolence structure is when people really step outside of their comfort zones and strive to understand what's going on, even if people are behaving in a way that is not in alignment with how they see the world or what they think. If they can at least, again, even if they don't agree, try to understand the why, I think that can do wonders.
Okay. So I'm going to follow up, Julia, with what are some practical steps you think individuals can take to promote nonviolence in their everyday lives?
Sure. Well, a big practice that we do at Community Connections, and so if you don't know Community Connections, we work with teens, most of whom have been sent to us through the legal system. So a lot of people coming to us with anger management problems or challenges, and maybe someone thinks they need a mentoring program, that kind of thing. So a lot of what we do has to do with just self-awareness, self-regulation. So I think before we can jump into anybody else's business, we need to take a moment and notice, like, what's going on with us, right? What's motivating my actions in this moment? And if I can be more aware and more kind of grounded in where I am, I'm in a better state to then interact with others. I think that's just a very basic level thing to do.
All right, agreed. Thank you. Ramon, what are some of the root causes of violence in communities, and how can addressing those causes help prevent violence before it starts, in your opinion?
Well, I think in a society, in a blended, diverse community like ours, there are many things that can attribute to violence, right? But some of the main staples across the country and even the world is, of course, the lack of economic opportunity. We have where people can't really ascend from where they are, so they resort to illegal means to provide for their families or themselves. But then also just a lack of civic engagement and to educate and broaden people's horizons past what they might think is the right way to go about situations. With the city, we have many programs in our human service division that aid to these types of ailments in our community. We have, of course, we've dedicated money to, the stoppage of gun violence. The mayor had an initiative to have $1 million go out into the street every year for 5 years to stop gun violence. That was in 2022. So since then, we've seen a decrease in violent gun crimes in Tallahassee because of that effort. And so things like that, getting out into the community and also teaching our youth on how do you resolve conflict. You might learn on the playground that if somebody steals something from you, first thing you have to do is slap them in the face. That's not always the greatest thing to do, right? Mm-hmm. And so that has to be somebody, some entity, some organization where they take that as a mantra to teach our youth there are better ways to go about resolving conflict. And we all can look back in our backgrounds and see where we had individuals who knew how to resolve conflict and where they end up. And then there's some people who didn't know how to handle conflict well, and where did they end up? And that needs to be preached from a young age in our community.
It sounds like some of the work that Community Connection and the Palmer Monroe Teen Center is doing. So we definitely can look to that resource to maybe assist us with some of that. All right, Deputy Chief Holmes, what are some challenges to maintaining nonviolence in the face of systemic injustice, and how can communities overcome them?
In law enforcement, I've found our biggest challenge in today's society is dealing with mental health. Mental health is huge. One of the biggest mistakes I think the country made back in 2013 was they closed down the long-term mental health facilities and basically said that people can self-medicate themselves and they deserve that right. Well, you have a mental illness, they can't. And what happens is they get out and then they self-medicate, or they self-medicate with drugs, alcohol, and next thing you know, you have an escalation in the behavior. And if that behavior has a violent tendency, which is what we run into, it escalates till they go into crisis. And when they go into crisis, that's when we're called, and that's when we have to deal with it. I noticed when we start tracking use of force in law enforcement, and in 2013, it was like this, and then by the time 2014, 15 hit, it escalated tremendously. So the mental health in our community is critical, and it's in my opinion, the biggest challenge we face as in law enforcement. That's what's and who is causing or committing all the crimes. Young people, untreated, undiagnosed mental health conditions and problems. They don't have a structured home environment. They are raised in the streets. They are taught to use guns at an early age. They learn criminal activity at an early age. So these are the things that we're faced with, and the juvenile justice system is not built to deal with those individuals properly, because it all stems from mental health. So I think that's one of our biggest challenges. What can communities do to overcome it? One of the biggest things we do at the Tallahassee Police Department is we build relationships and partnerships. When you build relationships and partnerships with stakeholders in your community, you build a line of communication. That's what can lead to reduction of crime. When you build that trust in your community with the stakeholders and the people who live in your community, then they start to trust you. Now that's not easy to do, especially when you wear these uniforms. But when you do that, in which we've been, I think, pretty successful in doing it at the Tallahassee Police Department, we still have a long way to go, but we've come a long way. And when you build those partnerships, when you build that trust and those relationships in your community and the community people, even people who may be involved in criminal activity, they might not like the police, but they trust you. If you build those relationships and partnerships, then they'll be able to tell you things before they happen, when it's escalating. And then it gives law enforcement opportunity to intervene. And if we can intervene, we can stop crime, therefore reduce crime. Reducing crime is not a law enforcement by itself solution.
Absolutely.
We will never, ever arrest our way out of violent crime period. It is a community effort. It is everyone in this community. We are all partners in this community. And the only way we're gonna be able to be partners is to understand each other's roles, the dynamics of each other's role, have respect for those roles, and then focus on what needs to be addressed. Because every community don't have the same problem. And if you learned in the past, heavy-handed in the community because you think they got a drug problem, you haven't taken the time to communicate with them, talk to them, and find out what the problem is, then you over-police that area and you're doing things that's going to cause a problem and cause distrust.
All right.
So it's a number of things, and it's a number of dynamics that have to be in play to overcome these challenges. So that's something we can go on for hours about.
We could. So I heard build relationships and partnerships, build trust, communicate. Ramon, you want to?
Yeah, I want to talk on the mental health piece that DC Holmes said, because I think that goes understated too much, and it's one of the biggest contributing factors to violence and all the craziness we see in society. The city back in 2017 had an initiative, which we call the team unit now, where when somebody can call in and they could be in a mental health crisis. Now, they might be in a situation where they might be on the way to doing a violent crime. But when they call in, and if we perceive that they're having a mental health crisis, we send out a police officer and a mental health clinician to go and to evaluate the individual to see where they are mentally. We may have to Baker Act them. We may can talk them down and de-escalate without having to Baker Act. But initiatives like that and programs like that is what the city puts in place to kind of speak to what DC Holmes is saying, building relationships. There's so many times where we get calls in my department where we might have had a person who called before who had a mental health issue. Now they may want to talk. Now that might take up some of our day, because we may have work to do, but that conversation could have stopped somebody from going and committing a crime or doing something to themselves sometimes. So building those relationships are key to preventing that.
Absolutely.
And if I might chime in, just one more thing.
Go ahead.
You know, last part of this thing says brainstorm some strategies to counteract the barriers. You know, one strategy is, you know, as I said earlier, a lot of these individuals we deal with, they come from broken homes. They don't have hope.
Mm-hmm.
And if a person don't have hope, they don't care.
Yeah.
And that's what I find, and we find a lot who we deal with, even the victims. You know, they could be shot or stabbed. They don't cooperate. They don't care. They don't. They just don't have hope. And you know, we as a community have the people, we have the facilities, and we have the professionals to actually help. But it's always a barrier there because you got fear, because fear is huge with anyone, because you can't help anyone if you're in fear of them. That's why you have to understand people and where they are. So, you know, we can overcome that and then go and show these individuals or show someone, be that example and sample that you can be someone. Then you never know that ingredient, that positive little seed you may have planted. So, you know, it's a holistic community effort to address this whole question.
It is. It is a very big question, but I thank you for at least attempting to tackle it. All right. So, Ramon, what does meaningful community engagement look like when it comes to violence prevention, in addition to what you've already stated as it relates to mental health services?
You know, this question is kind of the driving force behind our division of human services.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how can we engage the community enough in an impactful way to curb some of these things that ail the community?
Right.
And so, you know, every day I deal with a slew of different types of approaches, right? So one of the biggest ways is through our CHSP process. We put about $2.8 million on the street to nonprofits who deal with certain sectors of society, right? And so when we're talking about youth programs, we might think, okay, an after-school youth program they're a dime a dozen. But you have youth in those programs that if they're not there at 2:45, 3:45 in the afternoon, they're going to go home and play with a gun. Or they're going to go home to a drug-infested home or somewhere that's not going to be healthy for them, that will then lead them down a path of destruction. So that after-school program that we might give $40,000, $50,000 to, that's preventing crime, or that's preventing somebody from getting their life taken or some type of, you know, illicit activity, right? So that's one of our biggest processes. We also have the Tempo program. And last week, we hit a milestone. Since 2017, we engaged 4,000 youth in Tallahassee, disconnected youth. That term, Dr. Thomas, the director of our department, coined from saying these individuals, these youth between 16 and 24, they're disconnected from certain resources and beneficial activities in the community where that can, you know, advance their life. They're disconnected from that. So we connected with 4,000 of them to get them in GED programs or to get them into certain technical programs to aid their earning potential in life, right? And so engagement like that is really what changes people's lives and changes their perception. Because what we're talking about here are people who deem violence as the way, right? And so if we can shift that perception, shift that mindset towards there's a better way to go about life, that's the goal. But what does that? You have to have something on the line, or something at stake to say, I'm not going to be violent because I can lose an opportunity here, or I can lose my degree there, or I can lose my license here. And so with that in mind, that's why we push Tempo so much in our department, in the city overall, because that's one of the biggest deterrents of violence on the street, whether it be gang violence, gun violence, domestic violence, what have you. In addition to that, we have economic opportunity initiatives with our youth, our TIFLA program. So we have high school students who come and they have summer job or summer work program with the city where, like I said, if they're not coming to work earning $1, they might be on the street trying to earn $1 if they don't have that program there. So we have a slew of different initiatives and programs to help engage the youth to steer them down the right path.
Wonderful.
Can I chime in on that? I don't want to talk too much.
Quickly.
So y'all the one asked me to come. Y'all know I can talk. Yeah, you can go. No, I just want to chime on. One of the things we need to do, main thing we need to do, we're talking about meaningful engagement. Our youth need to listen. These kids, I'm the liaison for the police department's Youth Citizen Advisory Council. One of our former members sitting right there, Mr. Lawson. And I've learned so much from those kids. We're talking from 7th grade to 12th grade. Mm-hmm. And I have learned so much from just listening to these youth and found out so many issues that are going on, and issues that we can probably come to some solutions on, in particular with these schools. So I just wanted to chime in on that without being too long-winded.
You could. That's fine.
Listen to the community, and especially listen to our youth.
Absolutely. Yes. We have a question from the floor.
Okay, we have a question from one of our audience members.
Thank you. My name is Paul Ahrens, and I live here in Tallahassee. And in the spirit of dialogue, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. First of all, you all are speaking about situations and problems that I'm not aware of on a day-to-day basis, so I'm very grateful to be hearing that and to hear about some of the interventions. On the other hand, I also feel like there's an unease that I am aware of in the community. And it's based on factors not just here, but outside the community. And I'm really glad to see Commissioner Williams-Cox here. I really appreciate that she's here. I hope that others are going to be here as well from the officials of the city and county government. But for example, immigration. I got involved in an immigration rights group. They were interested in the agreement that the city had made with the national administration. It's called 287G. It's a collaborative agreement arrangement related to law enforcement or having to do with people who are undocumented. And when you see what's going on in Minneapolis right now, I think there are a lot of people living here in Tallahassee who must be terrified that something like that is going to happen to them. And so this issue about the agreement came up in City Council, and there was a 3-2 vote to maintain the connection, the 287G connection. It seems like a lot of votes in the City Council go along this 3-2 line, and I think after a while, people who are on the other side, on the 2 side instead of the 3 side, start to get cynical, or are giving up on the way that the government is supposed to work. So I just want to point that out. There was another issue about selling the hospital to FSU, to TMH to FSU. That's the sort of thing. I'll give you back in just a second. So what I'm getting at is I would like to hear some conversation from the panelists and also from the audience about how do we mitigate this kind of division that I think causes people to become exhausted. It's just, to me, that pervades our everyday life as well. And again, I think it's so interesting that there's this, that's one level, there's another level of the type of individual violence. You framed your question, you said, what are the challenges in the face of injustice? Maybe we could talk about some of the injustices and how we rectify those so that people are not in a desperate situation where they might resort to violence. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for your comments. And I think our focus today is nonviolence, and these other issues are ones that our community certainly has been following. And I think our panel today wants to focus on on the nonviolence in the spirit of Dr. King. But with that, I'll turn it back to Nicole to guide the response to your question.
Yes,
and then we'll get a chance for you.
You spoke very well, and that's exactly what I would say. So I want to get back to the questions, and if we have time at the end, then we'll get some audience participation, okay? So, Julia, I think you have the next question, which is how can young people be engaged as active participants in creating and sustaining a nonviolent community?
Sure. And actually, if I may, not to respond, I just want to acknowledge what he said. Just, I appreciate you asking the question, and I think that right there is a step towards having some semblance of mutual understanding, like to really be asking and interested in inquiry. So I think that's a start. I
Yeah,
just want
for
to
sure.
acknowledge. And back to your question, so how can young people be engaged as active participants in creating and sustaining a nonviolent community? So I'll speak to my program because that's what I live in, but I'll say that a lot of young people come through our program, and I know it's the biggest compliment that I could be paid as the program coordinator to have young people who were court ordered. We check in the first night of class, and we ask if people are there as a learner, meaning they're really excited to be there, or if they're there as an observer, like not so sure, or if they're there as a hostage, right? Because we have a lot of people who are there as hostages. Their JPO, their juvenile probation officer, told them, you need to go to this mentoring class. Maybe they were told by the state attorney, you need anger management, you're going to come here, right? And so what we do is we spend a lot of time on the front end just trying to humanize each other and get to know them. And like Deputy Chief Holmes said, listen, because they have a lot of wisdom to share. And if we're going to actually build any kind of relationships and community, we need to do a lot of the listening. As the people who have, we talk about disproportionate power, right? Like we are in this power over structure, and me as the adult, as the boss, I have this different level of power than they do. And I think if we can extend that and really try to share power as much as possible, and a lot of that for me is making sure they know their voices matter and being genuine in that, that really speaks to them. A lot of them have never had that. A lot of us have never had that. Really have a place where we feel emotionally safe, like for real, right? And so where our thoughts and everything are okay. Even if we disagree. So if we can learn how to stand in that, even if it's uncomfortable, and still navigate that and do it with respect and like real, legit, sincere and respect for everybody, they're hungry for that, and they come back and they volunteer, and that's huge to know that people who are court ordered to come to our program come back voluntarily because I think they want to continue soaking up that vibe, but I think they also want to give back to the new people who come in. So I see that as a really empowering way for them to stay engaged and also empowered in promoting nonviolence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a lot of conversations, and as you're stating, people want to be heard and valued. So,
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. All right, DC Holmes, how can institutions build trust with communities that have historically felt marginalized or over-policed? And I think one of the programs that you mentioned was with the youth. I think that's a great place to start.
Well, I'll work them in. One of the things we did when we started here as leadership team at Tallahassee Police Department is recognize what the problems were. Being from here, you have a general understanding or intimate understanding of what's going on. So we kind of knew what we needed to do. We knew the history between law enforcement and the marginalized community. We understand that law enforcement has been used as the government weapon to oppress people for 400 years. We understand that if government is an ink pen, then law enforcement, we're the ink, because we leave a mark, and that mark is permanent. You don't get to erase it. You don't get to wipe it away and say it don't exist. You have to own it and understand and see where you are, and then do those things I talked about earlier. 21st century policing, President Obama's 21st century policing philosophy. Start with pillar one. Build that trust through fairness, giving your community a voice, being transparent as you can in your community, and then being impartial. Okay, treat everyone as if you would want to be treated, or if you want your mom or your father to be treated, you treat people that way, and that's That's our expectations of officers in the Tallahassee Police Department. That needs to be the expectation of everyone in the community if you're calling yourself an institution. So we talked about the youth advisory, listening, just listening to them. I've learned I'll be 59 tomorrow. As a 59-year-old man, I have learned so many things from these kids, and I've been able to also pour into them as well. And then they can take those things back to their various schools, their various communities, and share it. And I've found that it's a dialogue. It opens a dialogue, or it opens communication between the affected generation. When we talk about all that we're facing right now, the affected generation, and not just the future leaders, but the leaders that are in place right now. You may call them a future leader. Mr. Lawson is a leader right now. So to build those trusts, you have to start with what I talked about already, having that communication, understanding and learning who your stakeholders are in your various communities, communicating and get to know them. Get to know them as a person. This institution of this badge and this uniform, this is what I do. This is not who I am. And when you introduce yourself to people and they get to know you as a person, they can communicate with you as a person. And then you, being in this various profession, you can, or whatever profession you're in, you can use your platform to work however you need to build that communication. Because as we know, if you build communication, you'll build trust, and people will get to know you, and then you just can have a dialogue chain that's not interrupted. I don't know if it's ever been in place to where someone in any community can pick the phone up and call the deputy chief at any time of night, can even call the chief. That's the relationship that we have built in this community. And when you build those relationships, irregardless of what happened, irregardless of what's going on in the country, you understand. Is there somebody told me at my citizen advisor council meeting, I trust you. I trust the chief. I don't trust ICE because I don't know them. And that's the biggest problem. So a lot of people are on the far right or far left or the far right. We have to be neutral. And I'm neutral. I'm about what's right. I could care less about what's far right or what's far left. But the problem is everyone's far right and far left, they're not wanting to meet or understand that you have to have the dialogue. You have to have some concessions. It just can't be your way, and you get to break the rules but want to hold everybody else accountable to follow the rules. It has to be a medium. That's the only way you're going to come up with a solution, and I'm about solutions.
All right.
And that's what we've been doing here at the Tallahassee Police Department and the city, just the city. I'm saying the Tallahassee Police Department, but our city as a whole, we work in concert with one another. And while working in concert, you have the funding tool, you have the communication tool. If you need to have the enforcement tool, you have that. And we are all working together in concert, just as the community. If the most successful communities, they're working in concert with one another, and they look out for one another. So that's the solution that we want to get to.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
I think I answered.
You did answer the question. All right, Ramon, you want to add something to that?
Well, I had more of a question for DC Holmes, and this is really for my edification in my space. These relationships you're talking about building, first of all, for the ones who are out there doing the violence, do you see where a certain age group, it's more beneficial to establish relationships with these age groups? So, like, for example, is it more beneficial to establish relationships with, individuals under 25 versus over 35, or is it just relationships overall would curb and help prevent certain violent crimes?
Overall, because you may not have a communication with a certain age group, but someone in your age group may have, and they may, no, that's Deputy Chief Holmes, that's such and such. He'll look out for you, or they'll take care of you. You can trust him. So all of that is just a part of it, of the dialogue and communication and getting to know one another. What was the other part of your question? I want to make sure I answered it right.
That was it, basically.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right, Ramon, how can education and dialogue be used as tools to address conflicts peacefully?
I think education is the biggest piece. I'm going to give an example. So I'm from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And when I was in, my high school years, I was one of those kids who, somebody tried you, they spoke bad about you or something. You're not trying to go talk to them. You're not trying to see what happened or what I do wrong. You're trying to fight, right? Or you're trying to do something violent to prove that what they're saying is wrong, right? But as I got older and I got more educated, I learned that, people who have education and people who think don't resort to violence first, right? They have communications and they talk to people who they may have conflict with to try to resolve it. And so I think that's one of the biggest pieces in this generation that we don't have. People do a lot of talking, but they don't do a lot of resolving conflicts. The talking that they do adds to a conflict, and then it results in violence. And now you see somebody dead, or you see somebody shot, or you see somebody who didn't get shot, but an innocent bystander did. And so that's why I think the education on how to emotionally check yourself and to have emotional intelligence to understand what are you feeling and how can you communicate what you're feeling to the individual who made you feel that way. I think that's one of the biggest things we can invest in as a community in our youth and even in our older adults. Because adults who are like me, who probably ain't as educated, probably are still trying to go out there and fight people in 2026. They're trying to go out there and go to the corner store and be like, you tried me, and let's go fight right now. And so that's a reality for a group of people. And so I think education across the board is highly important for anybody, we don't talk about anger management either. We have individuals who work 9-to-5 professional jobs who are the most angry people in the world. Amen. And these people are going home, having spouses, punching walls, punching children, punching husbands or wives, and they deal with anger. And this is where you see anger, you see violence festering, and then it spills out into the community. So anger management is one of those things. And people, they don't like to be transparent. They don't like to honestly say, I got an anger issue, or I deal with anger. But I think if we push transparency and we push, hey, I dealt with that before too. Let's talk. Let's build a relationship. Let's have a conversation. That can really oust a lot of the anger and the fire that's in people's hearts and souls that leads to violence.
So I'm going to pull Julia in because she, like I, am a student of nonviolent communication. You talked about emotional regulation, which is another huge one.
Huge.
And as I've already stated, human beings want to be heard. So I want you to speak to that same question about education and dialogue to be used as a tool to address conflicts peacefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect segue, actually, because I always remember when talking about my program and trying to help people understand kind of what we do, because it's hard to know if you're not in it. Like I could talk about it all day, but it's very different actually being in it. But one of our young graduates a few years, I'll never forget, he had pretty rough. He was with us for some pretty intense stuff. And he said when, we were asking him afterwards, what did you get from being with us? Did you learn anything? Was it worth it? And he said, yeah, I learned that I have choice. And it never occurred to him that he had a choice about how he responded. If somebody says something that he doesn't appreciate, it never occurred to him he could just not hit him, right? That's a whole other way of thinking. And a lot of us, maybe need that realization. So, and he said, with choice comes power. And so for the first time, this young man.
Say that again.
Yeah, he said, for the first time, I realized I have choice, and with choice comes power. And so for the first time, this young man felt empowered to live his life differently, and I think that's huge. And so for him, and he was a leader too. Lots of people, he's like one of our 17-year-olds on the cusp of being an adult, and a lot of our younger people really looked up to him. And for him to have that shift was a big deal in our group, and I'd like to think throughout the community. So I think the more we can really just take responsibility for our own actions and own up if, when we respond in a way that maybe we're not proud of, come back and make atonement, whatever we need to do, right? And say, hey, I'm sorry I didn't show up in the way that you deserve me to and that I want to. So I think that's really important. And I think the more we can empower our young people, and it's not just through, I mean, self-regulation is a huge part of it, but it's also through real practical steps like with the Tempo program, right? We refer a lot of our teens to Tempo, helping them get their GED, and then also with the TFLA program, the Tallahassee Future Leaders Academy. So helping them actually get financially stable and get them in the workforce and feeling confident and proud of themselves in that way. Because when you feel empowered, you make different choices.
Absolutely. I mean, you kind of answered some of the next question about how can mentorship, education, and positive role models help break cycles of violence. But did you want to speak any more to that specific question?
I think just really the same thing. The more people feel empowered and like they matter and like they belong, the healthier they'll show up in the world for themselves and everybody. And the more they can lead by example, too, which I like to think has ripple effects. So.
Absolutely.
Can
Well
I chime on that real quick?
You sure can.
Role models, positive role models. You know, I'm a product of a role model, of role models. You know, role models are why I'm wearing this uniform right now, because and I'm not ashamed to share it. Everyone know my story. Know my daddy had 7 boys. I'm the oldest of the 5 with him and my mom, and all my brothers are convicted felons. I'm the only one that's not, and the only reason that I'm not a convicted felon is because of positive role models. Someone had an impact and influenced my life and made me believe I could be somebody. And that's the difference between me and them. And, you know, I'll just say this, my baby brother's birthday was a couple days ago, and we had a little get together, and he came up and hugged me. He said I was his inspiration. And he was violent. Oh, he didn't play the radio, right? But he's successful now. He owns a home. He's getting ready to buy another, his second home. He's married, and he's stand up. He's a supervisor on his job, and he said, I'm his inspiration. That gave me chills right now still.
Yeah.
But people need to have someone of influence that's positive, something positive to give them some hope. That way, it'll give them opportunity to become someone positive and productive in this community.
Great story, and happy early birthday. All right, so final individual panel question, DC Holmes, how do we balance accountability and compassion when working towards nonviolence?
Well, everything I've said earlier, listen. We have to listen to one another. And I heard the question that my man here said earlier, and you know, he says it's uneasiness. He's right. It's an uneasiness, and I'm feeling that uneasiness as well. You know, because it's certain things that I'm gonna have to say. What am I gonna stand by? No. Because you know we have policies. We're governed by policies, local law, state law, and federal law. And that policy is something that we got to stand by. And if I see someone, I don't care what agency you work with. If you're doing something right, you're using excessive force, and you're doing something, I'm going to intervene. And you can have this uniform, because I'm not going to stand by and watch someone done wrong. I'm just not going to do that. And not Maurice Holmes. So, you know, listen, understand that it's more than one side to everything, you know, and everyone's different. My background is not your background. My background is not, you know, his or her background. All of us are different. All of us bring our own unique qualities to the table. If we take the time to listen and get to know, understand one another, we can use those qualities for the advantage of this whole community. This whole city. And that's how we can move forward. As I said earlier, I'm about solutions. And it's a lot of problems out there. And trust me, I beat my head against the wall trying to figure it out. And, you know, until we listen to one another, and I mean really listen, and not just want to shout and match, and it's going to be my way or the highway. We have to listen to one another and then come to that medium and understand it. And that's how we can agree or to agree to disagree, but we still can move forward. So in a nutshell, everything I said earlier, and listen.
Okay, thank you. All right, final couple questions for the panel, and then we'll take audience questions. All right, so in closing, can you provide some strategies that, what strategies can communities implement to heal divisions and build bridges across different social, racial, or economic groups? I think we've heard listen, I think we've heard building trust, I think we've heard, belonging, right? And that you matter. Anything else we want to contribute to that?
I could just add, I stand behind all those that you just repeated. And I could also add, I think it's important for us to step outside our comfort zones. I think that's key. Just, stepping out of the smaller worlds that we tend to operate in and trying on somebody else's perspective and just, being open to stepping into different worlds, I think is very helpful and effective.
Agreed. Thank you for that. Ramon?
Yeah, I think just to second that, I think, just having conversations with people who aren't like you, who don't think like you, who are completely opposite than you, gives you perspective. I think perspective is one of the biggest things and the greatest things you can have in life. And so even when we do like the longest table event, that's a great time to have conversations with people that you may not ever see again, but may not ever have the same perception or outlook that you have on life. And it gives you a broader scope on what's really going on and how do I fit in all of this.
Absolutely. Great example. Yes.
Take the time and have the respect to learn different cultures. Learn different cultures. One of the biggest things that we talk about when we train officers is get them to understand just because, if people are different from you, doesn't mean they're crazy or they have problems. A lot of times you just have to learn that's a culture and educate. When you educate the differences in cultures, people get an understanding of that culture. You might not like some of the things, but at least you understand the differences in cultures. And then if you understand, then you can respect those differences that those cultures have.
Okay. Thank you for that. And this is for any of the panel, what gives you hope when you think about the future of building a nonviolent community? Ramon?
This sounds terrible, especially somebody who believes in Jesus, but I don't got a whole lot of hope, man.
I need some hope, Ramon.
Well, hear me out. Not with how things are presently constructed. We can change it. But with how, especially and I'm not against social media, but if you see what's on social media and you see some of the most visceral comments, people go straight to the comments now. And people just lay into people and they just say whatever they want to say. I'm not hopeful because I don't think we have a lot of respect for each other. Even sometimes we see, in some public meetings, we see people don't have respect for each other. So if we're going to change it to provide hope and to build hope and to breed hope, we have to start being respectful of each other. We're talking about violence. That's one of the most disrespectful things you can do is be violent with somebody. Slap them across the face, try to shoot them, brandish a gun or something. That's the most disrespectful thing you can do to people. So the hope piece is, can we build respect for one another? No matter who they are, what they believe in, can we respect everybody? Period.
Amen. Yeah, that's well said.
It was well said.
In the spirit of Martin Luther King and his I Have a Dream speech, I did a speech a couple of years ago called I Am That Dream. And I am that dream. I am that dream because I'm what he saw. And I'm not done, but I'm what he saw. And if I can be that, then anyone can be that. And it says, what gives you hope? So that's what gives me hope, because every day is my intention to make a difference in someone's life. I pray a prayer every morning where I ask him to lead me, guide me, navigate me, and through all the challenges, pitfalls, and anything that come along the way. And when I arrive at whatever designated place he's ordained for me to be, that I stand on this word and let that word flow through this body. Let that word flow and penetrate this body, this soul, and this mind, and let it come from these lips of clay, and let it be spoken in deed as well. So when you take that on individually, you bring something to the table. So that's my hope, that I'm able to make a difference in somebody's life every day, some kind of positive way, which is not easy because it's hard. It's hard for me when I see some of the things I see. It's extremely hard, but I thank him for giving me the strength and you know, the fortitude to continue to press, because I mean, I got to look at me as a something positive, just like my baby brother just told me. That's one of those little winks that he give you, that I'm doing something right. If I'm making some input. So if everyone had that mindset to make a difference in someone's life, every day you step out of your house, your office, or whatever the case may be, then you are too, in the spirit of Martin Luther King, you are that dream.
Thank you.
That's tough to follow,
It
I gotta
is, but you
say.
got it,
But
Julie, you got it.
I will just add that what gives me hope is the young people I work with and seeing their growth. They're with us for 14 weeks. So to see them when they come in and see them sitting there closed down and suspicious, and with every right to be so, totally understandable. But to see over the course of their time with us, the like true connection, I think that's built with us, like with the staff, but also with the adult community volunteers who are in there as well, is really moving. And, you know, it crosses, I think, like real nonviolence, like real acceptance and emotional safety, like that crosses any boundaries of, you know, gender, age, class, all of that, all the backgrounds. And that's beautiful to see, and it keeps me going. That does give me hope.
Okay, wonderful. Final question. Is there one message you want the attendees to leave with today? If so, what's that message?
Everybody looking at me?
Yeah, we looking at you.
I'll just say this: choices.
Choices.
Life is about choices. You either can choose to be a part of the problem, or you can choose to be part of the solution.
Okay.
The choice is yours.
The choice is yours.
The choice is each one of you in this room, and my choice is to be a part of the solution. And I got to die to be a part of the solution, so be it.
You know, I think there's a guiding principle. It's in the Word in Matthew, and we all know it. It's the golden rule. You know, treat others how you want to be treated. I think if we did that as a society, we wouldn't see a tenth of the things we see in our city, county, state, nation, world. Treat others how you expect people to treat you, and talk to people how you expect people to talk to you. And I think everything would be a lot better if we had that as a guiding principle.
Preach. All right. Yes.
Yeah, I would just add that I think sometimes it can feel, at least for me, overwhelming, the amount of challenge and hardships that people are facing in the world, and things that don't seem fair and just. And I think rather than giving over to despair, just to remember that even small acts can carry a lot of weight. So hold the door for somebody, smile at somebody, right? Like start there, and you can always build on that.
Love it. Love it. Y'all, please give it up for our panel. Lots of food for thought. So hopefully those seeds have been planted or watered today, the things that they said. So we'll open it up for questions. So if you'll just state your name and give us your question or comment.
Hi, my name is Sarah Coffin. I wonder what Dr. Martin Luther King would think about the way that immigrants, non-documented people, are being treated today. And there is one thing very tangible that can be done in our city. There is the 287G agreement, as this gentleman brought up. It is bringing violence to our communities. Now, thank God, Tallahassee has not been affected by many other cities, but it could be. So, in my opinion, the way to change that is to rip up that agreement with ICE, the 287G agreement, which is within the power of the city government. Now, they don't want to do it because they're afraid of ramifications from the governor's office. What would Dr. King say? ramifications, we're going to do what's right. And this is what's right. Now, if they were like the Tallahassee City Police, where they were respectful, if people got due process, if they weren't just taken from somewhere and never heard from for months and months, it'd be different. But that is not the reality. And we cannot have blinders on to that. They are a danger. They're bringing violence to this community. They operate above the law, and it is not right. So I will leave you with WWDKD. What would Dr. King do?
Thank you. Okay, Dante.
Good afternoon. I'm Marlon Williams Clark. Listening to all of the panelists today, and we're talking about gun violence in our community and how we treat each other, heard a lot about choices, really personal decisions to make, choices to treat others more kindly. But I think we also have choices as a collective. So based on the work that you all do and what you see, what are some policy that you think, some policy that we could put in place? Because if we're going to have a nonviolent or have a culture of nonviolence and a nonviolent community, we have to invest in nonviolence. So what are some policies that, from based on what you all see in the work that you do, that we could possibly advocate for to make sure that we have more nonviolence and to lessen the gun violence in our community?
We have policies in place like duty to intervene. We have structured policies, how we treat people. But you can write all you want. It has to come from here. Mm-hmm. And it starts with your integrity. And that's one of the first things we talk to when we hire a new officer, integrity, because that's you when no one's looking. That's your foundation. And if you compromise that and you lose your integrity, then you can't be a police officer. Even if you're wearing a uniform, you're supposed to be an officer of the court. Your credibility is zero because they've proven you to be a liar and a person of no integrity. So you can have policies in place. Policies are guidelines, but you have to make sure you have people in place to make sure those policies are being adhered to and followed correctly. Because, just an example, complaints. We look into every complaint that come in to the Tallahassee Police Department, no matter how small. We're going to at least put an eye on it. And if some issues are there or we see issues, that we're going to address them and correct them. And if those issues continue, then that person is either going to be disciplined on higher or might have to find him somewhere else to work. So you have to have not just policies. You have to enforce the policies. You have to have policies. First of all, you got to know them, and then you have to enforce them. You have to make sure that you are following them. So if we're going to investigate every complaint, we're going to look into them. And when we find something, we need to make sure we act on it. Because if we don't and it escalates, it's going to come back to us. So, I understand what you say about policy, but it has to come from the person. That's why we are so critical with our background investigations and things of that nature. And even with that, you're still going to miss some stuff. But the key is, how do you follow up when those complaints come in? And it might be, 5 minor complaints, but those 5 minor complaints are showing something that needs to be corrected and addressed. And it's our responsibility to correct and address those issues. And that's how you improve the behavior of your organization.
I'll speak to just what the city's doing now, and I think that on the nonviolent, against gun violence piece, I think we've done a lot of things that spearheads this effort in the state. Like I said before, the city put out $5 million, which is $1 million for 5 years, to curb and to go against gun violence. Now, being the person who had to implement that on the ground level, on the boots on the ground, it was successful. But what the hard part that we had to figure out was there's not a lot of people in the community that's not police officers who are doing the intervention work. You have a lot of prevention work where you have youth programs and things to help youth more so. understand that violence is not the way. But when you start talking about intervening in a gun violence situation, there aren't a lot of community partners who do that. And so whether we have a policy that has funding to back it, we don't have the end user or the person who would actually be doing the work to actually be available to do it. So I think that is, if there's a challenge, that's the challenge, is to find the community partners that we have, that's boots on the ground, that's in the community to actually do the work. Because, as a municipality, the city's already, we have what we do. And we're already stretched thin with that. So, we only have limited resources to do what we have to do. We need the community partners to get on board with how do we really implement policies from our standpoint, from our vantage point, to help the community not be violent.
I would just add that there is a group that I just want to mention, in case anyone's not familiar with them, called Connection First. They actually grew out of a group of volunteers from Community Connections. So this was a group of adult volunteers who were big fans of what we were doing and wanted to see the work spread throughout the community. And so they actually organized, and they do restorative justice. And it's free. They're fully funded, so it's free, and they can take cases that are criminal or even just community cases. But they're really, really skilled at bringing together people and allowing each other to hear from different perspectives that kind of expand people's awareness in a way, and maybe awareness of the impact of their actions in the larger sense. So just want to throw that out there.
Thank you. Dante?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dante Bonner. This is more of a comment based upon what you all are saying. I think I really appreciate what you all are saying. Perception is reality. And while it is wonderful that there is an advocacy concerning the youth, the one thing I always like to remember, I'm a trainer with the Florida Commission on Human Relations, and one of the things I'm always highlighting when we're talking about history is the fact that Dr. King wasn't that long ago. So we're talking about there are parents and grandparents who are still alive today, and if they have the wrong ideology, then that is being passed down. So one of the things is the fact that we're talking about nonviolence is that voice has to be louder than what is being put out there. So yes, it's great that we're having these programs, but we got to make sure, is it louder than what grandma is saying? Well, yeah, I know what they're saying, baby, but what you had to do when you go down there and do that, because that's what's in the ear, because who they're looking up to, who they're hearing. So it's not only just the youth. We have to make sure the seasoned organizations, that they understand that there is two sides. You have to learn the particular cultures concerning that. And when we're talking about nonviolence, what does nonviolence actually look like? When we had Dr. King march, we had protests, we had people marching, we had all those different things, and yet it was a perception they were going to be violent. And so unfortunately, things started happening. So then we need to make sure we're on the same page as far as when we're saying nonviolent, it's not based upon my internal biases or what I perceive as a fear that something may happen, but allowing persons to exercise their choice to be able to express what should be done as opposed to what is actually being happened.
Thank you. Right here in the front.
Hi, my name is Ramon Benton with His Garden Ministries. And as I listen to the panel, I hear some wonderful comments, input, feedback, anger management, leadership skills, being an exemplar, so many things, working with the youth as older people, being an example to the youth. And I personally believe, and I know I'm not alone in this, peace begins within ourselves. If we're not at peace within ourselves, we can't be peaceful with anyone else. And there's something going on right now. I'm not here to advocate any particular, I'm a person of faith, but I'm not here to advocate any particular faith. But has anyone seen the peace walk with the Buddhist monks from, Fort Worth, Texas, ultimately to Washington, D.C.? I think they're in Greensboro, North Carolina right now. They went in Greensboro, North Carolina. So they stopped at Selma, Alabama, in front of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They stopped in the cradle of the Civil Rights Movement, Montgomery, Alabama. They were in Atlanta, I believe.
They were.
And of course, through Columbia, and now Greensboro, the sit-ins, right? anyone knows civil rights history. So they're kind of following that march that was preceded by the civil rights marches. And, you know, once you get to Washington, D.C., go back, you know, after the assassination of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., you had the Poor People's Campaign, the Poor People's March, Resurrection City on the Capitol Mall, if anybody remembers that. I'm a little older than some people, younger than others, but I'm still young, just not as young as I used to be. So where am I going with this? The crowds of people that have come to watch the monks walk. They're walking. They're not marching. They're walking. It's been incredible. It's just been amazing. If you see a lot of YouTube stuff. Not too much national news about it, but local news wherever they stop. I think it's very impressive. And you see people of diverse, of all complexions, of all nationalities. Probably many of them have the monks have been hosted by churches and community centers. So, you know, this is an unbiased approach. They say we're not marching to promote any religion, we're marching to promote peace. Peace begins within. And here's what really touches me. I want to get to this point. I don't want to get off on a tangent. The head monk is actually showing people how to become peaceful within. It's one thing to talk about it and the rhetoric about peace. We all want peace, and that's easy to say. But he's teaching practical skills to people, and they're listening. They're paying attention. How one can find peace within. And compassion, right? Peace, loving kindness. These are basic things. And compassion is an action. It's not just thinking about it, you know, but it's actually learning to practice it. So I believe in teach one, reach one, teach one, you know, as you were talking about, Mr. Holmes, Deputy Holmes. So people are tired of the divisiveness,
Amen.
of the violence, the gun violence, the divisive rhetoric, people not talking about the issues, but throwing mud and throwing stones at each other. Who can throw stones, really? We're all, you know, Scripture tells us all have sinned and come short the glory of God. Romans 3:23, I believe, right? So there's nobody can throw a stone. Judge not, lest ye be judged. There's so much judgmentalism going around, throwing stone throwing. I'm getting dyslexic here. That you know, we're not doing nothing. We're just going around in circles. You know, circular reason. It doesn't make sense. But here are these simple Buddhist monks teaching us. And I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not here to promote Buddhism, but there's some truth in everything, really, if you want to listen to the truth. And I think they're a great example of how we can start to live peacefully. How can we apply that in Tallahassee? Just do like them, you know. Just walk humbly. Respect others. Find peace within yourself, and let that peace flow from you. Learning different cultures, being open to what they have to say, and have a listening ear. What can you learn? Be open to learning. I've been blessed to be here 70 years on this planet, and I'm a great student of life. I love to learn. I'm here to learn, you know, but I'm also here to share. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you. So what I heard is Mr. Benton is going to be our drum major for the Tallahassee Peace Walks. Mr. Mitchell.
My name is Tommy Mitchell. I'm an educator, I'm a retired educator. But my background is with 7 years with a remand center in the Bronx, New York, which was a center for youth who had been arrested, but the intent was to keep them away from the hard criminals.
Talking to Mike, Mr. Mitchell.
For 8 years, I was hired in Long Island related to some racial issues where I had to, it was a 65% Jewish community, to 30% Italian, and 5 or less minorities. And I was director an at-risk program for youth in there. And for 17 years, I directed a program called the Black Male College Explorers Program at FAMU. And I said all that to say this, is that my concern is the solution to the violence problem. Obviously, gun violence is one, but if we're going to solve the problem of violence, we talk about a cultural problem, we talk about a family values problem, and so we have to teach our children how to handle violence. For instance, it's also a freedom of speech. I had to teach children that, look, I don't care what they say about your mother, you can't hit them. That's against the law. It doesn't matter what, you don't like what they say, but you don't have a right to hit them. And then there's a whole issue of how do you deal with adversity? Do you have to fight? Is it better to negotiate out of it? And even in terms of family values, a classic example, when my kid came home crying and I asked him what was wrong, he said, this guy hit me. I said, what did you do? He said, nothing. I said, why? He said, he was bigger than me. I said, was he bigger than me? He said, no. He said, well, then the next time you come home crying, you're going to have to fight me. Now, that sounds like good advice because I was trying to teach my kid how to defend himself. But in essence, it was the dumbest thing I could do today. Any fight now would take a life. And my son went back, he fought the kid, and then they shook hands. That don't happen anymore. The fight's not over. So what we have to do is start with the violence part, is help our kids to deal with adversity. That, walk away, just like me. I mean, I don't have a friend that can curse me out. You can curse around me, but if you curse me, I don't mean I'm gonna hit him. I mean, we're through talking. There's no more discussion. If you have to treat me that way. So we have to look at how to teach our kids about adversity. A young guy has to understand if his girlfriend drop him, he can't hit her. I mean, you don't have the right, you lost that one. And my solution was to teach him how to count. What do you mean, how to count? I said, what number are you? 1. I said, then why are you concerned about number 2? How you let number 2 influence your life? If she doesn't want you, she lost. You're number 1. And so we have to look at ways to deal with violence, and certainly we need to make sure that kids don't get to the point that they want to shoot someone, that they should try to learn how to negotiate out of a fight. Fights normally start with an argument. Why would you argue with somebody you don't like and they don't like you? That's a waste of time. So to me, I think we have to look at violence now, obviously gun violence, that's a legal thing. People ought to be able to go in a restaurant and not be intimidated because somebody else has a gun. We shouldn't give somebody the right to walk around with a gun so they can threaten somebody and the person feel hopeless. And now people are buying guns now because they're afraid somebody else may shoot them. So we have to look at solutions, and obviously there are some legal ones, but educationally we have to teach kids how to deal and respond to adversity.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I think Mark had a question.
Good afternoon. Mark Schlackman from FSU's Center for the Advancement of Human Rights. And just an observation and queuing off of Deputy Chief Holmes' listen. There is space for rolling back before programs, before the longest table, before acculturating ourselves, before attempting to draw lines between U.S. citizenship and non-U.S. citizenship. And actually, the lines are not as clear as undocumented and otherwise. But there's opportunity, queuing off of the last comment, not just to educate children, but to educate all of us. And to what end? Well, if we roll back to human rights that are inherent to simply being a human being, and then contextualizing with civil rights, which are codified human rights, we then start at a understanding that regardless of who we are, where we live, what we believe, what we don't believe, what religion we practice, if we don't, socioeconomic status, et cetera, the humanity or the underlying human rights gives us a restarting point. And interestingly, in the city, just a few years ago, the mayor took on a treaty framework that was ratified by 174 nations, including the United States, that based upon being ratified, it's accorded weight of federal law. What does it say? Well, it relates back to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which Chairman then Proctor of the County Commission moved a resolution recognizing the significance of human rights at the local level. Commissioner Williams-Cox has been looking for a vehicle to continue the day of dialogue throughout the year. Well, we have opportunity. And before we get to the programs and the specific issues and otherwise, it's sometimes, to borrow the phrase, the obvious can be elusive. I mean, the human rights emphasis, there are frameworks there that can be employed locally. And before I say good day to you, since it is Martin Luther King and we are focusing upon nonviolence, you, no doubt, many of you have heard this before, know the backstory better than I do, but it's not as widely quoted. Darkness can't drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And again, as many of you may know far better than I do, the love that Dr. King spoke of was based upon understanding of us and one another, which goes back to that core element of human rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Hey, how y'all doing? My name is Emmanuel, just a citizen here in Tallahassee. I just want to, I guess I had a comment and just say I think what's important or what's needed is to stay dangerous or to be dangerous. I think what we don't understand or what we've forgotten is that what Dr. King did in the movement that he was the head of was a dangerous movement. It wasn't safe. They weren't in safe spaces. They put themselves in danger. And that's what I believe needs to happen, is we have to understand that we can't be pacifists. We can't just sit back and think that if we sit in safe spaces, if we do the safe thing, if we do the nice thing, that's gonna work. And honestly, I believe the turn that this country is making is because not just those who are actively doing the things that we may disagree with, but those who could stand up won't, because they'd rather be safe, because they'd rather do the thing that is going to make them comfortable. You can't do that. If you're a Christian, Jesus was not comfortable. Jesus didn't do the comfortable thing. He went against the authorities. He went against those that said, this is what the Torah said. He said, no, this is not how you should do it this way. You should look at and do the things that are right for the people, not just what the word or what the law says. He said, what is Caesar's is Caesar's. Let them have that. You have to do what love moves you to. That's what Dr. King taught. Do what love moves you to. And that means putting yourself in dangerous situations and not just thinking being safe is going to make any changes, because it won't. And when it comes down, even with gun violence, we have to step into those spaces. Whatever the youth is at, we got to step to them. We can't think that we can talk to them from a podium or a bench or from the media. We have to get to where they're at and let them know that their life means something. Because clearly it's nihilism. It's clearly that they don't care about life. And clearly it's not just them, it's not just the youth. And I'll be honest, yeah, the president, he doesn't care. That administration does not care. It is clear. And that's a sense of nihilism. It's a sense of not caring about communities, not caring about people. And so if we know this is wrong, if we see something is wrong, we can't continue to be safe and live in safe spaces and think that's gonna make a change. Dr. King made a change by being unsafe, by putting himself in danger. And unfortunately, we celebrate him today because that danger came to him. So as long as we sit where we're comfortable at, then we're accepting what's gonna come. But we have to get unsafe. Till then, we're just wasting our breaths. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other right here? Okay. And don't forget, there's a Day of Dialogue event survey, if you'll complete those before you leave the room.
Afternoon, my name is,
Just hold it up so we can hear you.
good afternoon, my name is Ronnie McDade, I'm Tallahassee resident, and more of an observation, comment to the panel, thank you, to community leaders, thank you. One question in particular from what I've noticed in since graduating from A&M in 95, I began working with the city Parks and Rec shortly 95, 96. And I noticed back then that there were community centers in the, what we would call now the disadvantaged neighborhoods, but I don't want to call them disadvantaged because everyone in our communities have the ability to take advantage of opportunities. But one thing I'm noticing now over the years, the absence of the community centers where I remember officers would come in and engage with the youth and foot to the pavement, to the homes of the youth who would oftentimes get in trouble in school. And I remember personally those individuals would then come to the community center after school and have a safe haven during the hours that they could have engaged in mischievous activities. Moving forward now in this day and age, those centers do not exist. And it's warming to hear of Tempo. It's warming to hear of homes being engaged in our community, as well as from the legislature. We all know that it starts at the top and it trickles down in our community. But observing the empty chairs in the room represents at least a household or 10 youthful offenders that could be a part of our community and be future leaders. So I say that to say, yes, we've invested money to have programs, millions of dollars, but why and when can those millions of dollars be poured back into our communities so that our young kids, our parents can see people like Holmes, Alex Anderson, and Judge, and Everett, and Williams, Cox Williams, that they can see people that are trustworthy, because a lot of times they don't trust law enforcement. You know, they don't trust clergy because, you know, they only see certain people when it's time to vote. But if we can get out and encourage the youth that we're all there to love them and to pour back into the homes, we would see our community, we would not see as many in the judicial system. Most of the times, these young kids, they see first time entering the court system. You asked when we could start? It could start in elementary school. Amen. When they're becoming, back in my day, it was Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. There's no such thing for us anymore, for our kids to be a part of, other than going to juvenile. And that's something that we should not look forward to, encouraging them. Most of the youth are on their cell phones, engaging in social media. How did I find out about today? Social media. If we could go back to monthly town hall meetings back in the day, if we can get back into engagement, that's how we can get engaged with the community, because we can hit the pavement. They will see people like Holmes. They will see people like Anderson. They will see people like the judges who have a heart and not just see them when it's advantageous for them. There are people that are desiring to be a part of and to help, but it starts at the top so that they can trust the top, so that they can meet them in the middle and to get on the ground and be working. That way we won't see them on Appleyard. I'm not saying we're gonna clean it up overnight, but that's one solution that I'm looking back, just looking back. Most of those kids had an opportunity to be somewhere from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Now, if it's about funding, let's get on social media, and just as we petition for events, community events, let's get on social media and promote. one night a week or one night a month where we can pour the community. Let's fill the seats up, and then you will actually hear from the members of the community the truth, and you'll be able to take it back to the roundtable discussions and behind closed doors, because no one has that opportunity to call Alexander. No one has that opportunity to call Commissioner Cox. No one has that opportunity because they don't feel like their voice will be heard.
Thank you for your comments. I'm going to push back a little bit just because I volunteer at Bond Elementary once a week with a first grade class. We've started a garden. We are working on jigsaw puzzles. We read. And so I think we have to take responsibility within ourselves to do that work. The community centers are open until 9 o'clock every day, except they're closed on Sunday. There are activities that are taking place at Walker Ford, at Jack McLean, at Jake Gaither. That was the other one I was looking for, yes. And so, but are we involved? Are we as a community going to these centers and getting involved with the youth? So I think the city does what it can. Both city and county does what it can, but we as citizens also have to take that initiative to get involved. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
And I want to say thank you, Nicole. And if you're thinking that we don't have those anymore, that means that there's a communication gap. And since I've been here at the City of Tallahassee, I have said we've got to tell our story. We're trying to do the good work. But we have those out there who are not interested in doing the good work. They're interested in people pushing buttons and getting the bad news. And so they don't share the good work that we're doing. They share the other stuff. And that's what got people wanting to stay away. We've got to share the positive news. We have very active community centers and service centers where from the cradle to senior citizenship, we have participation. We're building a new senior center, because the one that we have is so overactive that we need one. So along with that, the $1 million a year for 5 years, that's huge. I work with cities all over the state of Florida. There are 411 cities, towns, and villages in the state of Florida, and we're the capital city. And they want to know how we're doing what we're doing here in our city. We're doing great work here, but the issue is that it gets overshadowed because politics overlays the good work that's being done. And as a result of that, people may not be getting the news or getting the information that they need because the focus is on what divides us, keeping us divided. And I think that those of us who are interested in us being a united community, being a beloved community, as Dr. King would say, it is incumbent upon us to help educate those who may not know. I did a meeting just before the commission meeting, and it was reported. Okay, it was reported because the media was there. Less than 12 people came. And the reason I did it was so that folks wouldn't have to park in Clayman and come up the hill to come in here to be heard. And we've done this throughout my tenure here, that we've had meetings in the community. And when it's time to raise hell, the place is packed. We're reacting, this place is packed. But when we're trying to get ahead of things, it doesn't always happen that way. And so it's just, sometimes I guess it's the nature of who we are and what we are. And I too believe that getting to them early is important. When my kids were little, we had the DARE program. That funding and that kind of activity kind of went away. We're trying to get back there, but that requires money. And where do you get it from? And across the street, they're talking about taking away property taxes. That's huge because that's how we fund law enforcement. And we don't have enough officers for our city size. We have, 500 and some odd officers. And of all those 500 and some officers, we have one officer, and I'm going to just touch this quickly, one officer who has been trained to enter information into the system for the 287G agreement. One officer out of 500 and some odd officers. What happened here on that one day, our officers were not involved. We were not asked to be involved because we didn't have anybody trained or ready to do that work. My point is, we have a lot of great things happening in our city, but we're focusing on sometimes the minor because that's what's being reported. We've got to understand who we are, what we're doing with the resources that we have. City of Tallahassee is very unique. We have a lot. We have our own utilities. We have an airport. We have septic sewer and all this stuff that we have to deal with that a lot of cities don't have to deal with. And so we have a $1 billion budget that we spread over to take care of 205,000 residents in the city of Tallahassee. That's what we have, 205,000 residents. And so if there's a gap or a need, I get phone calls, our staff get calls. When we get calls, I send it to staff to make sure that we see what we can do to get it covered. When people are unhoused, folks get calls over the weekends. Can we get these people into some emergency housing until we can figure something out? When people need, whatever, it's cold. We got to get people off the street into warm places. We're doing that. Those are the things that happen behind the scenes that the media does not cover. And so because the media doesn't cover it, you don't hear it because it's not negative. And I'm not saying all media is negative, but a lot of it is because they're trying to survive. And the way they're trying to survive is to get you to click their button so that they can get likes and they can get whatever. But we're back here doing the work, doing the hard work, trying to keep the city moving. And so, and to my dear friend, Dr. Aarons, since I had a mic, I'm going to say this. The media is the one who has made a 3-2 vote a dirty thing. Once upon a time, City Hall was corrupt. Now, we're divided because we got a 3-2 vote. But a 3-2 vote is what keeps the budget, because there's a 3-2 vote on the budget as well. And that budget is what funds these programs and pay staff and do all the things that we're doing in our city. If we don't vote for a balanced budget, then we can't move our city forward. But the media doesn't report that the budget was a 3-2 vote, and because it was a 3-2 vote, the budget has been approved, and we can now continue our programming. We can now continue the $1 million a year for gun violence. We can now have CHSP funding. So my point, my real point is this. We're doing the best we can with what we have without keep coming to residents asking for money and taxes. Because we're on the verge. If something doesn't happen across the street over there real soon, we're about to lose property taxes. And again, that takes law enforcement away, that takes parks and recs away, that takes away senior centers. All those things are taken care of out of that. So while we're not perfect, we have opportunities to do better and to do more. And as we learn and work together as a unified city, we're able to do those things. So I just wanted to just stand and say thank you. Thank you to Nicole for being who you are, not only when we call on you to do these kinds of things, but what you just said. You're volunteering in the community. All of us are doing volunteering in the community, doing things that we can do to help fill in the gap. Volunteer means you don't get paid. That means you don't get paid.
Right.
And thank you to our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, our Inclusion Office, which is a dirty word these days. It shouldn't be. Dr. King stood up for everybody. Everybody. He was irregardless of person. So thank you all. Our director this year is Ms. Andrea Griffin, and she got baby girl working, mama here. It's a family affair. Thank you for the work that you and your staff have done to make this happen. This doesn't happen in every city. This doesn't happen everywhere. You know, some people sleeping in on Martin Luther King Day. I don't care how cold it was. It was cold when they did what they did. And there were dogs, and there was water hoses, and there was billy clubs, and there were mean people doing these things. But it wasn't until the media showed it on television what was happening down south that the rest of the world got involved. Now our media has flipped because we got mean people in mean places doing mean things. But we got 2 ministers up there, and I'm sure another one in the audience. We cannot fret ourselves for evildoers because they will soon be cut down. God sees it too, and he's going to take care of that. Well, we got to do our part. We got to do our part, and he's going to take care of the rest. That's my hope. That's where I get hope, because I know he sees it, and I know in his time, he's going to fix it. How I know? I'm a product of what he fixed. I'm a product of what he elevated. I didn't walk to this commission and just sign up. There was a process. I was a teenage mother. I could have chosen a different path, but because God had his hand on me and I had people praying for me, I had a village praying for me, I'm able to stand here today and say that my baby is 48 years old, well, with 3 degrees, a wife with 2 degrees, 3 children, one with the degree, one with on getting another one, and so on. My point is, God sees it all. And in due season and in due time, he's going to fix it. We got to do our part. That's what we got to do. And our part is not pointing fingers at others, not picking and choosing who we want to support and who we don't want to support. We're all in this together. We got to live united.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Glory.
So we are supposed to end at 3. We got to end at 3. It's a little past 3, so I just want to respect the time. But I want to thank everyone who came to participate in this talk. Thank you again to our panel. Again, please give them a round of applause. Thank you to the City Division of Inclusion. Mr. Griffin, thank you so much to you and your team for pulling this together. And again, please complete the Day of Dialogue event survey before you leave. I think they're collecting them in the basket in the back. Yes? Okay. I think our panel, may stick around for a little while if folks have more questions or want to talk to them individuals. So enjoy the rest of the day. We are still outside until 4 o'clock. So please join me outside and we're going to enjoy the rest of this MLK Day. Thank you again.